Namaste and welcome back to another episode of The Sapient. Today we have Isaac on the podcast. I don't know whether I just spelled his name right or not. I hope I did. Could you let me know how do I spell your name?
It's ISAAC, Isaac Mashman.
Got it. Yeah, but you got a very, I would say, interesting second name, right?
It's unique. It's funny, Ganesh, because I actually used to hate my last name. I absolutely despised it growing up because it was my biological father's name, and I didn't
Mm-hmm.
really connect with him until I was already an adult. It was one of those situations where he wasn't in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
He and my mom got divorced when I was still a baby, and
Mm-hmm.
so growing up, I had that animosity towards the idea of Mashman. I had no emotional connection. I hated it. But then
Mm-hmm.
as I got older, I realized, man, I could build it and give meaning to it, and
Yes.
here we are.
Yeah. It's almost like the McDonald's name, right? It's like a marketable kind of name.
Hmm.
I'm asking you because you are in marketing, right? You're in
Yeah.
personal
So,
branding and marketing.
mhm. Well, yeah, personal branding is marketing and branding are symbiotic when it comes to building a personal brand. I mean, we could have a debate on whether marketing or branding is more important, but really, the kind of brand that you're trying to build influences your marketing strategy. You don't see, Rolls Royce marketing at, an American football game or at the soccer World Cup, but you'll see like Rolex or something marketing itself at, a golf tour or a higher class sport like tennis. So how you're wanting to build the brand influences how you market. But Mashman is, some people that I work with and some of my clients
Hmm.
struggle because their name is so common. Like Brian Johnson is somebody I recently had a conversation with, but how
Hmm.
many Brian Johnsons are around the world?
Too
Hundreds,
many,
thousands.
too
And
many.
so if you're trying to build out your personal brand and you're fighting all these
Hmm.
people, you have to really dig deep into strategy, or maybe use your middle name or use an initial or use a pseudonym, and it becomes a struggle. But for me, coming in as Isaac Mashman, that's one of one, baby. That's
Yes.
unique,
Yeah.
and I think that, like, for example, if I was to search up Ganesh Dada, like,
Yeah.
is that a
It's
unique
hard.
name, or is it,
No.
and especially, and this is really an interesting thing from a cultural perspective that I think we could totally have a conversation about, that I've never really talked in a podcast. But
Hmm.
typically, you think about certain cultures, like how many Muhammads are in there, in
Too
Arabic
many.
cultures, Arabic
Too many.
countries.
Yeah.
Millions, and same with
Yes.
like Spanish people. How many Isabellas, or how many, Hernans,
Hmm.
or how many Andres,
Yep.
Alejandros, and it's the same thing with like Indian, culture as
Hmm.
well. I mean, a lot of the
Yeah.
names, like I think about Neil Patel, right, and he's one of the
Yes.
greatest marketers in the digital age today. His
Yeah.
name is Neil Patel, but
Hmm.
I imagine he probably had to fight to show up.
Yeah. 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 Neil Patel is rather a common name, man. Yeah, man. I think he got into SEO in the right time, right? Where he did establish himself before other Neil Patels established themselves.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a similar struggle for me too, because I don't have a great second name. Like great sounding name.
Hmm.
So I almost had to rely on my initials, right, which is GD, rather than the whole name, because I don't know why my parents named me so weird. So what's your opinion about, right, people who change, like, let's say they come up with a stage name, right?
Hmm.
So what's your opinion of that? Do you think it's more of a fake thing, or is it like whatever works?
I think it's smart. And a lot of times there's some hesitancy when choosing a stage name because you feel like you're leaving yourself. And you're not leaving yourself, you're making a strategic business decision that will help you become more marketable and stand out. And so it's not trying to be disrespectful to mom or dad because your parents named you at the end of the day. It's not like you're saying, Mom, Dad, I hate your name that you gave me. No, it's that you have to make a decision that's best for your business and for your success long term. And so whether that be, for example, coming up with a middle name. So you could be Ganesh Z Data, for example, like, and use Z as the middle initial. That could be a strategy that you could use. And what does Z stand for? Well, it doesn't really matter, but it helps you stand out because now you could get the handle at Ganesh Z Data, get the website, get the URL, get all
Hmm.
those things to where now you're promoting yourself as such. And
Yeah.
coming up with a pseudonym or a stage name. I mean, think
Hmm.
about Lady Gaga or The
Yeah.
Rock, right? The Rock is
Hmm.
not The Rock. The Rock is Dwayne Johnson,
I don't
and he's
think that
commonly
that's
known.
also his legal name though. That's what I feel like. He has too many stage names. Right? I mean, there is
Well,
a whole possibility that his real name is not like Dwayne Johnson, maybe.
I believe his real name is Dwayne Johnson, and but his stage name is The Rock. But you think about
Yeah.
a lot of the celebrities you follow, they use
Hmm.
stage names because their actual name was taken or didn't sound as good. And you think
Yeah. It
about like,
just sucked.
well, yeah, it sucked or it doesn't flow off the tongue. It's not memorable. You're not wrong. But I mean, think about you coming into the name and your name is John Smith. You're not going to be memorable, right? Like you wrote the
Yeah.
Declaration of Independence kind of thing. Like that's what it sounds like, but coming up with something, interesting, something that is marketable, something unique that creates that memorability that people can have.
Yeah. I feel like the worst name you could have is John Doe.
John Doe.
Right?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I think
yeah.
you must have experienced it, right? All of the, like extra texts contain his name already
Mhm.
there, right? People use his name as example all the time. So if you're John Doe, Isaac, what is your suggestion to a John Doe at this point of time?
Man, it's such a fascinating and really easygoing conversation, but I love it. In that case, I would say again, you could look about using a middle initial or using your full name. So let's say your middle name is, let's just go ahead and say that it is Samson, right?
Hmm.
So you could go by John Samson Doe, and
Hmm.
you would be much more likely to show up on that. But even then, you wouldn't want to use John S. Doe because there are probably thousands of John S. Does out there. Now, John Doe in of itself is not a common name. That was if I'm not mistaken, that was something that was created as an
Yes.
identifier for missing peoples, and so it's called a
Yep.
John Doe. But speaking as if that was a common name, such as
Hmm.
John Smith or Brian Johnson, you could
Hmm.
use your middle initial, you could create a middle initial, you could use your full middle name, or you could go into, let's create a name that's entirely unique. So maybe you drop the dough and
Hmm.
you create something different. So it's John Sampson, Excalibur. Just something that could be so outlandish in a way to where now you're known as John Excalibur or
Hmm.
something else. um, that way you can really start showing up in search, having your domain, having your social
Yep.
media handle. Because you think about, why is this even important? Well, it's visibility. And if you're fighting with, in your case or Neil Patel's case, a thousand other Indian marketers, you're like,
Yep.
how are you building yourself as an authority? And,
Yeah.
and this is saying in a respectful way, but it's a challenge. And
Hmm.
man, I think that India is becoming, there was a book that I read in high school that was talking about how India is becoming that mega center for
Hmm.
business and the economy.
Yep.
And we think about outsourcing here in America. A lot of companies
Hmm.
outsource to India or the Philippines because it's cheaper for the company in the US, but the quality of living that we're able to provide for, let's say, somebody who's in India or the Philippines is high because of the standard of living and the quality.
Yeah.
And I think that more people we're going to see this entire Instagram hustle culture in
Hmm.
India over the next decade. I could see that
Yeah.
happening. The same thing in
Yeah.
Africa, like we're going to see Nigerian influencers, ripping off Dan Bilzerian,
Hmm.
and other business people. And I think that's
Yeah.
exciting to see. It's going to make it hyper
Yeah.
competitive, but
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like, okay, there is a fact that says, we have our own space program, right? ISRO, and you people have NASA, and
mhm.
more Indians work in NASA than ISRO.
Fascinating. I'm not surprised by that fact. But I mean, you look at statistics and you look at, like, in the
Yeah.
United States, for example,
Hmm.
what nationality of people make the most money, and
Browns.
Indians are up there. It's not not the average white person who has the most income. It's no, it's
Yeah.
you have Pakistani, you have Indian, you have
Hmm.
these foreign, you know, ethically diverse people and groups that are
Hmm.
making more money. And I think that that speaks to the work ethic of, let's go to America, the land of opportunity, and let's create a
Yeah.
life for ourselves, when you could start creating that life, where you're at, and putting
Hmm.
out content online and building out a personal brand and building out your significance and your trust, your public authority.
Hmm. Got it. Isaac, if a person wanted to grow an online personality, let's say, right? Let's not call it as a brand. Let's call it as a personality. Um, from zero, right, from ground up, how much time and how much effort, right, would they need to put in before they make something of it?
Well, it depends on what you're looking to get from it, right? So what is that
Just
something?
fame, just fame, just recognition,
Okay.
right?
Well, you have to first understand that your personal brand is you. A big misconception people have is they believe that they create a new website, they create a new social media page on Instagram or Facebook. They're creating a new personal brand. And that's not the case. Your personal brand you've had from the moment you were born. From the moment your
Hmm.
mom pushed you out and gave you a name, you've had a personal brand. And I could argue that you've had a personal brand even when you were in the womb, because she was talking about, talking about little baby Ganesh to your grandparents, to your grandfather, your
Hmm.
grandmother, and to all of her friends, right? So you've had a personal brand, and now you have to go and consciously start building it and leveraging it and doing things that can, get you results. And so whether you want to be famous or you want to make money, you all start at zero when you create a social media page. But whether you get your local friends to follow you online, which they're probably going to
Hmm.
criticize you, but let's say you start connecting with business owners and wherever you're at, your city, and whether
Hmm.
that's somebody who's a tech entrepreneur or a local stand owner, or somebody who's at a business networking event, or a hotel owner, you connect with these
Hmm.
people online, and you start popping up time and time again, and you come up with something to sell, whether that be a service or a course or a pro.
Yeah, I lost you for a second there.
Yeah, I don't think that's on my end, but we could just resume where we were. It's not a problem.
Yeah, yeah. So we were talking about how, you know, when we start to build a social media presence,
Hmm.
right? What are the steps to do? And, my question was, how much time and effort does it take to build something,
Yeah. Well,
something substantial?
absolutely. And in terms of time and money and what you're putting into it, you don't need to put any money into it to start with. Like, you have
Hmm.
the normal clothes that you're wearing on your back, you have the normal phone that you're using, and so you could take that phone and start recording yourself and just putting yourself out there online. You create a social media
Hmm.
account, so you get on Instagram, you get on Facebook, you get on LinkedIn, you get on these platforms underneath your name. You get the same social media handle across everywhere. So, for example,
Hmm.
my name is Isaac Mashman. I have at Isaac Mashman everywhere. There's no dispute
Hmm.
which Isaac you're following. Like, it is me.
Yeah.
And you start creating this omnipresence. So you're everywhere
Hmm.
all the time. And then from
Yeah.
there, you create content based off of a specialty and based off of you as the person. So you showcase some of your interests from time to time. But let's say you're wanting to be known for podcast management, or you're wanting to,
Hmm.
create a specific business such as consulting, or helping with YouTube optimization, or you're wanting to do social media management. You start creating content based around
Hmm.
those specific subject areas. And the reason you create this content is you get viewed as an authority in that field. And if you're viewed as an authority and you have people who know that they can trust you, then
Hmm.
you're able to stand out and start getting more of their business and more of the person's business on the other end of the phone, the other end of the screen,
Hmm.
even though they might be 5,000 miles away from you.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. um so when you look at the whole content perspective, right, like how people put out content,
Hmm.
I think there is like two kind of sides to that debate. Yeah, there is one side which says, give value to your followers, right, in terms of share what you know, or spread knowledge. And there is another, I would say, the side of debate which would say that, share less, but gain more mileage in terms of reach.
Hmm.
So which side are you on in that particular context? Because a lot of people have gone through the cycle of creating everything, and they're established.
Hmm.
But they, I think, people, it's like bipolar, right? It's like they're confused what to do, or they do the both, right? They try to give value for some time, and then they're like, okay, it's not working, so let me pull back the level of value,
Hmm.
but gain more mileage in terms of reach, organic reach. What's your, I would say, side of debate on that?
Well, this is a very intricate question that has a lot of different avenues I could go down and talk about. Now,
Hmm.
I am in the boat that says you don't need to just create value. You don't Value could be perceived as motivation. I could motivate you with a video and you could feel good. That's an emotional high. Get the dopamine spike, you feel good. What I'm about
Mm-hmm.
is strategic value. So, what's the difference between value and strategic value? Well, just like I'm going and walking through the actual steps that you need to take in order to start up a social media account, or how to, find a way for you to stand out with your name if you're fighting other people. That is an
Mm-hmm.
example of strategic value, something that people can go from step A to step Z,
Mm-hmm.
from step 1 to step 121. That is what people are wanting. People are not stupid. And I think that social media has created this rift to where people think that they could just put out some piece of crap content that they think is motivational, right? And what is that person getting on the other end of the screen? And there are four
Mm-hmm.
main things that a piece of content can do. It could do a combination of all four, one or two, three, all, one. It could entertain. So it's making somebody feel good, right? You're entertaining somebody, you're making them laugh, or maybe they watch
Mm-hmm.
it because they like it. It can educate a person and teach them something new. It can connect them.
Mm-hmm.
So the piece of content that you create is connecting you with the person on the other end, and vice versa, because there's a shared interest. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, most podcasts, it's 10 p.m. when I'm recording this with you, but typically I'll have a cup of coffee in my hand, and people
Mm-hmm.
know that I drink coffee. I'm not like, I don't drink tea, I drink coffee. So that is something that can establish rapport with somebody on
Mm-hmm.
the other end of the phone. And
Yeah.
then a piece of content can inspire or motivate and take that person to another level, to where they feel like they could take action and run through walls, right?
Yeah.
So when you're creating a piece of content that could be talking about how you can launch a podcast, well, you could
Mm-hmm.
talk about the actual strategy. So it's educational. You could say that I did this myself, so it's inspirational. You could say that
Mm-hmm.
I remember one of the goofiest things that happened,
Mm-hmm.
that's connecting you. And then you could go into the editing style to make it
Yeah.
entertaining. So you can
Mm-hmm.
do all of these different things with one piece of content, and the more boxes you can check, the better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, the second part of that question is, well, should you be reserved with the amount of content you create, or should you go wide with the distribution? So really effectively you're talking about, should I only post maybe one piece of content every couple of days, versus let me post
Yes.
multiple times a day or one time a day? Now, I
Mm-hmm.
am in the boat that you need to be posting at least one short video every single day. And
Mm-hmm.
you need to be posting that same video on multiple platforms. So you have
Yes.
multiple algorithms working for you. Now, a lot of times in the music industry or with celebrities,
Mm-hmm.
there's this perceived distance between the person who
Yes.
is the fan of the celebrity and the celebrity themselves. So you have this distance, this question, this void, this curiosity that's created. And that will naturally be created as you create content and as your follower count increases. So the
Mm-hmm.
person who has 100 followers doesn't have much distance between them and the follower who's going to their profile. But now, Ganesh,
Mm-hmm.
imagine if you had 1 million followers or 100,000, there's distance now, to where that the
Yeah.
person who hits that follow button or thinks about hitting that follow button is saying, okay, this person's done something. They're a little bit different
Mm-hmm.
than me, right? And that's when we
Yep.
get into the psychology of building a personal brand, and the psychological way that this entire thing works. Because us humans, man, we're emotional.
Yes. And we can easily be manipulated, right?
You're not
That's
wrong.
what marketing is about.
It is.
Right. Yeah. I was about to ask you this, right? Because I'm also a digital marketer.
Hmm.
Um, so when people come to me and ask, like, what should I do to put out a lot of content, but I don't have a time? I'm so this is my suggestion. Let me know how, or what could they do better. I'm like,
Hmm.
the best free content that you could produce is podcasts. You go on other people's podcast, you get the video, right? You clip it through AI
Yeah.
and just post it, right? It would take them less than 20 minutes for 25 reels or shorts.
Hmm.
So it's like, that's what I suggest. Is there any other alternative ways which is free and quick?
Well, Ganesh, that would be literally one of my pieces of advice that I would give a client. Like if a client said, "What
Hmm.
can I do?" and I don't have a whole bunch of time, it would be go on other people's podcasts or start your own podcast.
Yep.
Use artificial intelligence to edit it. Thinking about 5 years ago, if I wanted to have somebody caption my video and add Zoom and add music and all that other stuff,
$100 per hour.
no, literally, it would have cost me 50 or
Yes.
$100 for a package of two or three videos. And now I pay $10 USD for an editing software called Captions AI. I take a video that takes me, over time, I've gotten better at recording content. So what used to
Hmm.
take me 45 takes, I can do in 3 takes now, but it's
Mm-hmm.
taken me time and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, I would argue maybe damn near thousands of takes in order to actually get good at this. But now I
Mm-hmm.
take that video, I put it into Captions AI. It
Mm-hmm.
adds the captions automatically. It adds emojis. I'm able to put the zoom. I'm able to put the music and create something that's 100% unique. And it costs me $10 USD every month, right?
Yeah,
Very low
that's
barrier
simple.
to entry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's making it hyper competitive, which means that you need to
Mm-hmm.
start doing things to where other people are edifying you. And what is
Yep.
edification? Edification is basically saying that you vouch for a person. You say that
Mm-hmm.
I trust this individual. Me coming on your show is a form of edification because you're saying to your audience that, hey, I trust Isaac Mashman enough to invite him on for this
Yes.
conversation, and vice
Mm-hmm.
versa, because now I promote it and I
Yep.
say, hey, I was on the show. This is great. Now you're edified because I'm
Mm-hmm.
basically saying, hey, I was on the show and now I'm promoting it,
Yes.
which means that I liked you enough to want to
Mm-hmm.
see you win and gain exposure. So it's like this mix
Yes.
of selfishness and selflessness that
Yeah.
ultimately curates content. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what
Yeah, I
I'd
think
recommend.
yeah, I think this exercise is more about attention swapping, right?
Yeah.
People who are looking at you look at me, and people who look at me look at you. Yeah, because this is not like a sponsored or anything. There is a software called as Weed, VEED. It has an AI feature where if you put up like a long clip of
Mhm.
2 hour conversation, it will automatically go and put in captions, put in your logo if you want, and it will cut into like 30 seconds, 40 seconds reels.
Mhm.
And if you have like 2 hours conversation, it is because I try it and I use it, right? So it generates more than like 50 to 60 reels,
Mhm.
and I'm like, yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Right. I, I mean, that's like the best free marketing thing that a person could do.
And you could record a vlog or a long form training in front of a whiteboard or so many different things. You
Yes.
could do webinars and you could clip those into a bunch of pieces of content as well. So
Yeah.
like YouTube, the YouTube app
Mhm.
has a remix feature that you're able to remix your own long form videos that are vertical or
Yeah.
horizontal and clip them into a bunch of vertical videos. And the other thing that
Mm.
you could do is reaction style videos. This is something I'm like, man, this takes literally 2 minutes to do. But let's say
Mhm.
there's somebody like you take a Neil Patel clip and he was talking about the difference between personal brands and Kylie Jenner and corporate brands
Mhm.
such as Coca-Cola. I took a 5
Mhm.
second clip of that and I reacted to it. I added to it. I didn't just react to it.
Mhm.
I added value to that reaction. And I said that, hey, this is actually true. You think about personal brands, you think about Jeff Bezos and Amazon, you think Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, you think
Mhm.
about Elon Musk and Tesla. So I reacted and I added value. And by
Mhm.
doing that, you could get 50 pieces of content done in less than a day. And now
Yes.
you're not even having to do all of the bulk and the heavy lifting of creating it originally yourself. You're adding
Mhm.
expertise to it. And that's, this
Yeah.
conversation's aimed at the person who's working to become that professional in a field, in a niche, not so much the broader base, like, this is a personality. Although I do
Yeah.
think that you should showcase your personal side of you as well, some of your interests
Yeah.
from time to time.
Mhm. Yeah, but I also feel like internet has a lot of tolerance.
Hmm.
So you can talk about anything and everything. Like even the shit that you do not understand, you can talk about it.
Yeah.
People will still listen to you. But the question is, can you retain them, right? Can you retain them in the long term? Will they be engaging in your future content, right? That's the proof of your work.
Hmm.
um, so okay, let me ask you this. What do you feel about like idiot marketing, when people or brands treat their consumers as if they're child, like they do not have the comprehension ability, so they try to you know talk down, I would say,
Yeah.
in marketing. What's your opinion on that?
Oh man, the best way I could explain it is they're the politicians of capitalism.
Yes, exactly.
This right here is a clipped video right here. We could take this and clip it, viral. No, literally, I believe that businesses or people that speak as if their consumer is stupid, they're the
Hmm.
politicians of capitalism. And what do
Yeah.
politicians typically be referred to as? People who are better than us, better than the common folk. This is historical. I mean, all throughout history, we've had politicians that are thinking that, oh, I have to come in and save the day because they can't save themselves. And when a
Hmm.
business or a brand is talking about, okay, let's address something and just, I'm trying to think of an example other than the broad base, just It's kind of like covering up a reputational crisis. So before I
Yes.
went into Mashman Consulting Group and the 100% consulting space that I committed to, I was running a public relations for Mashman Ventures, and public relations is notorious for cover-ups. And there's a
Mhm.
negative connotation when it comes to PR, right? So PR is like you're manipulating people, which is common in marketing, but PR is like you're hiding things. And
Yeah.
if you're
I
thinking,
mean, I think there's a saying, right, that says PR exists because people mess up,
hmm, I've never heard of
right?
that, but it's true. It's true. But PR, and I could talk about that for days on end about how public relations is not reserved for celebrities or the rich. Every single thing you're doing to build out your personal brand is a form of PR, because public relations is ultimately a person's relationship with the public, right? That was literally said by Edward Bernays. It's like it's the relationship with the people. And so you're thinking about a cover up and a brand acting like it didn't happen. It's like you're basically saying, oh, you're gaslighting your audience into thinking something, versus getting ahead of it and saying, no, okay, this happened, we screwed up. And now if you think about we screwed up versus the I don't know what you're talking about, or the ignorance, which is going to create more security long term? The audience would be much
Yeah.
more likely to respect the brand, or for
Hmm.
the respect the person for saying I
Hmm.
messed up, than
Hmm.
saying no, you're stupid. Nope, nope,
Hmm.
didn't happen.
What if you take the Diddy route? The rapper Diddy, right? You know, he never responded to his accusations. Do you think do
Mm.
you think that's a sound strategy? Like, just don't talk about
Well,
the shits.
I don't think it's a sound strategy per se, because I believe that though it happens, it depends on the situation. It's very relative.
Hmm.
So think about Liver King, right? The big guy who's on everybody's Instagram page. But no, I know you're laughing here, Ganesh, but this is a real conversation about.
Yep.
He went on multiple shows, multiple times, multiple occasions, and
Mhm.
said, "I do not do steroids."
Multiple years.
Multiple years as well, right? And
Yeah.
it was clear that, all right, he probably is doing it, but let's just leave the gig alone. Then he came out with an apology video and he said, I screwed up, I lied. I lied. He has not been able to recover his brand. The reason why
Yeah.
is because he specifically lied to the audience. If he
Hmm.
did not lie, and if he came out and let's say he just said, no, I do steroids, but this is beneficial, he would have had
Hmm.
security in his brand. Maybe not as viral, but he would have had security. Versus, let's say, P. Diddy, right? And he's completely ignored everything. It's kind of like I'm trying to think of the best way of breaking this down, because you think about Andrew Tate, right? One of the most famous guys on the internet. Let's talk about Andrew Tate. And this is only the second time on a podcast I've done so. He's gotten in front of every single accusation and said, this is why it's false. This is what's going
Hmm.
on. And people
Yeah.
respect him for it. He's
Hmm.
been able to turn that perceived negative thing into some way to where now it's no, like I am in control of the narrative. And so the conversation here, Ganesh, is I'm in control of the narrative versus the narrative is in
Hmm.
control of me.
Yeah, but okay. Let me dive deep, right? Because there are people who do not answer accusations. Like, they do not even address it, right?
Hmm.
And that kind of makes them like bulletproof, I feel like. For example, if you want to talk about rap, it's like Eminem, right? Like, people have accused him of a lot of shit, and he never responds, and that kind of makes him um accusation proof, right? Like, you can throw shit at him, but it's not going to stick. um that's why I asked you what's your take on that, because a lot of people, their core marketing is to never address issues.
Okay, but if we're diving deep about this, though, Eminem has addressed all of those accusations that he's ever been thrown. It's not
Hmm.
that he's accusation proof, but it's that he takes the accusation and he references it in his craft, so in his music. So it's like his most recent album, the Death of Some Shady, which in my opinion is his best album since like 2008 Recovery. uh,
Hmm.
he literally addresses everything that he's been accused of over the past couple of years, or like the
Yeah.
culture and how he's fallen off and all these other things. And so
Hmm.
he is answering the accusations
Yeah,
through his craft,
but
but the
it's
average
it's in a
person,
it's in a longer time frame, right?
yeah,
It's not like accusation happened and he responded, right?
yeah,
It might be a couple of years, you know but he's going to respond it eventually.
this is
Do
true.
you think that's beneficial, or it's like the crisis mode, as you said, like Andrew Tate, right? Whatever happens, instant feedback
Mhm.
to the audience? Which one is better?
Again, that's relative, and you could say that me even saying it's relative would be avoiding the question, but it's truly relative based off of the situation and what the accusation is, or if it's something goofy versus something that can be spun, because a lot of accusations might be stupid. Like, for example,
Hmm.
the steroid thing could have been spun into a way where it's comedic, or that a way that it's like he could salvage the brand somehow. But in a case like, let's say, sexual assault, or like the P Diddy thing of trafficking people, like, okay, if he was to come out and be like, "Man, I didn't do that," like, let's take Drake and the rap beef with Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah.
He basically was like, "Man, I'm too famous." Like, he
Hmm.
basically said, "I'm too famous to be the R. Kelly kind of thing." I don't know if
Hmm.
you've heard his song, the response to Kendrick, and he basically dug himself a grave that he's not gotten out of yet, because he said, "No, I'm too famous." And so you have to be strategic with every single, and especially this is high level. If you have a
Hmm.
million people watching you versus 100 people, if 100 people are watching you, you can get away with this stuff and be like, "Okay, this
Yes.
is a part of, I fucked up, let me go ahead and not do this again." And maybe you don't address
Hmm.
it, but if you have a million people that are holding you accountable, you
Yeah,
have
you're
to,
fucked.
well, you have to hire a PR team to help navigate the crisis, or just literally
Hmm.
grab the bull by the horns or by the
Hmm.
nutsack and go and say, this is what happened, and sharing your side. But then people are going to be making opinions, and you might lose some people who might have respect for you. That's okay, but you have to pick and choose your battles, and pick and choose, if I respond to this is the potential
Hmm.
outcome, and it's ultimately about predicting outcomes and what would potentially happen.
Hmm. Yeah. Are you aware of the you know Dana White's oil me up situation?
Not particularly, no.
So he was on a live stream on Instagram, and he was talking about something, right, about upcoming shows, everything,
Mhm.
and somebody just commented, and enough talk, oil up Dana. And he just said, what the fuck's oil up, right?
Mhm.
And that particular movement grew, I think, around 2 million followers for him instantly, like, like people just connected, right?
Yeah.
So do you think, the reason I'm asking you is, like, there are people like Gary, right, Gary Vaynerchuk, who are like, be yourself. um, but people feel that they're imperfect and they don't want to be themselves, right? They want a polished version of themselves to be out there rather than the messy part of themselves. So do you think that showing humor, or showing, I would say, integrity or honesty, which are very core to a person's character, do you think that's beneficial, or is it like, let's try to avoid it and
Mhm.
be a bit more presentable? Because
Yeah.
I feel like, humor is not presentable that much because it's just natural.
I think it's quintessential you show your personal side. Now, you're laughing and joking and stuff with me in a way to where I automatically like you that much more, because you're not trying to come into
Hmm.
this. But even then, there's a balance between what you're doing, Ganesh. You're not joking to where you're not taking this serious. You're
Yeah.
inserting well-timed comedic rebuttals and
Hmm.
driving the conversation forward in a way to where I know that I could joke with you. And if we were to have
Hmm.
a cup of coffee, or like sit down, like, I'd be able to have a conversation with you as a friend, versus this is
Yeah.
just somebody who's trying to put on and being like, "So what do you view about marketing? What do you view about branding? Do you have your
Yeah.
own website?" So if you think about personal brand, the left side, you have personal. This is the personality. This is what builds rapport. This is what builds trust on a deep emotional level. There are celebrities you follow, or mentors you
Hmm.
follow more than others, not because of what value they're providing to you, but based off of what you see in them that you see in yourself, or there's an aspect of their story that you like and you appreciate.
Hmm.
And then you have on the right side of personal brand, you have brand, which is what do you use to make money? What is your
Yeah.
credibility? What is your profession? What is the
Hmm.
thing that is driving you forward when it comes to your career? So you have to have this balance here. And so if you're creating content, for example, for every two business posts, you might make one
Hmm.
post that is personal. So you might do one about you going out to eat, or you sharing a story, or you talking about your fears, or you talk about your desires, you talk about your vision. And this is ultimately developing your skyline. I call this the skyline strategy. It's a 2-to-1
Hmm.
ratio, two business
Okay.
posts, one personal.
One person.
Because there are people online that anybody can be an expert in something and talk about podcast management and how you should have a host provider and you get it distributed via RSS feed and whatever
Yeah,
else.
I can do that.
You
I
can
can
do
fake
that.
that.
But can somebody have the same Ganesh personality and be like,
Yes.
you might look like an idiot, but at least you'll be
Mm-hmm.
good. And
Yeah.
just for example here, so the
Yeah.
personality is so important. I cannot express that enough. But there's, again, you don't want to come across as a gimmick, as somebody who's not
Mm-hmm.
serious,
Yes.
but you do need to show your personality. So you can be
Mm-hmm.
this well-crafted professional while having a little bit of like rough edges that
Mm-hmm.
help people attach to you and want to
Yeah.
see you win because they see the person outside,
Mm-hmm.
or the person inside, versus just the person wearing the suit and tie.
Got it. Um, I have, because I have a lot of marketing friends, right? And the trend that I see now is when they have a kid, right, in their home, and the first thing they do is get a domain in the name of that kid.
Mm,
I think that's like the smartest investment that a person could do.
1000%. And what's more important than that is naming your kid something that is unique. So I know
Oh,
what I will name my
Elon
future
Musk.
children. Now, well, yeah, but thinking about him naming his children, they're all unique, but not everybody has the last name Musk either, right? But I already
Yeah,
have.
the youngest has the most creative name. You cannot even spell it.
I don't even know how to. I just would refer to him as X. But even then, I think that what Elon's done is gimmick. Frankly, I
Yes.
think Elon's built his brand as that like billionaire shit poster. I personally probably
Hmm.
wouldn't do that. I think that there are a lot
Yeah.
of things that Elon could probably do better, but he's also the billionaire I'm not yet. So you
Yes.
know what's worked has worked for him. But when you
Hmm.
choose the name of your kid, yeah, you need to name them. You probably don't want to name your kid after you and say this is Ganesh Datta Jr. or this is Neil Patel. Like, you're not going to want to do that. You're setting your kid up for failure versus setting them up for success. Naming them something a
Hmm.
little bit different. And I already have the names of my future children, whether that's a son or a daughter, and I could always add more to the list. But I know that I'd be able to get their domain. I know I'd be able to get their
Hmm.
social media handle. I know that they'd be
Hmm.
Googleable. I know that they'd be able to build up off of my personal brand. But I also know that I'm not going to name my son Isaac Mashman Jr. because he would always be in his father's shadow. And so
Hmm.
it's not something where it's like when you ask the question, it was almost like this is super smart, but it's almost gimmicky. It's not a
Yes.
gimmick. It's brilliant.
Hmm. Yeah, because it's just well thought process,
Hmm.
you know. And if you can put thought into something that's natural, right? Of course, you are in the front foot, I would say, in terms of just handling that. Um, yeah, it also feels like as the time is moving forward, that people today, right, are slowly converting from people based brands, right, to a bit more natural looking brands in terms of just aesthetics and how communication is done, right? For example, if you look at Ryanair's Instagram, right, they never post any serious shit at all. Right? And they almost convert their complaints or criticisms into memes.
Yeah.
And you could argue that hurts, obviously the brand, but it seems to be working for them, at least on Instagram.
Well, there's a time to be serious and there's a time for play. And that's what businesses are beginning to realize and understand. So on April Fools, you might create a joke as a brand, but you're not going to create a joke every single week. So it's really about, kind of, again, how do you crack a joke? You don't just come up with a joke like it's
Yes.
a stand up and you takes 5 minutes to tell a joke to somebody in public. That's stupid. But if it was at a
Yeah.
comedy show, yeah, you would build up to it. But if you were in
Hmm.
a conversation and I'm cracking a joke, it's going to
Yeah.
be well timed based off of the situation, based off of the time. And so you have to be aware of what the timing is in order for it to
Hmm.
land, that punchline to hit. And when it
Yeah.
comes to building social media posts and building a brand, you don't need to be making it a gimmick and creating
Hmm.
jokes every day of the week. But on April
Yeah.
Fools, or maybe there's press, or like I think about Ryanair, one of the airlines out of England. They were, they made so many jokes last year that were all well timed, based off of political situations and based off of things like James Corden, one of the talk show hosts, and they were
Hmm.
like James Corden on his way back to something something something, and I remember it went viral and gained them millions and millions of views on Twitter. And so I think that businesses, especially small businesses who are
Hmm.
aware and actually culturally competent, would probably be the word that I would use, have a leg up on other businesses that are the traditional, like, corporate,
Hmm.
impersonal side of things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because you know, there are brands which have built their entire brand on being just funny as fuck.
Hmm.
That's just their thing, right? And then you have coffee shops which are very transparent in terms of their business, right?
Hmm.
They it's like they almost fill their taxes on Instagram. They show their incomes, their expenses, what's their margin, everything. So yeah, there is definitely two sides to the coin. What do you think about deliberate controversy, like people wantingly stating controversial things?
I'd avoid it. Typically, I'd avoid it
Yeah.
because anytime now, I'm not in the place where I was a couple years ago where I would have said that you should always avoid religion or you should always avoid politics. So I believe that there is a time and a place to mention those things.
Hmm.
If you don't need to necessarily, if you're building out your brand and let's say you're Christian or you're Hindu or you're Muslim, you're not talking about that every single day of the week unless you're trying to be a pastor or an imam or a religious figure, right? But every now
Hmm.
and again, making a post about faith and how that fits into your work or how that fits into your life might be important. That can connect people. It's done out of
Yes.
a intention of connection versus an intention of division. And deliberate
Hmm.
controversy can be, really, it could backfire. And again,
Hmm.
it looks gimmick. So again, it's like you're forcing the joke versus letting the joke come out. And I'm trying to think of an example of deliberate controversy off the top of my head. I can't come up with one, but I don't think that it's a strategy that people should really implement.
Hmm.
um I would avoid it.
Got it. Yeah, because there are people like me who are crazy. The reason I say is, I always like to roam in the outskirts of society's limitations
Hmm.
of what's accepted and not accepted, because I feel like that's the exciting space for human to exist, right? Because everybody hates Kanye, right? Kanye West, or people love him. There is no in betweens,
Yeah,
right? And never met a person who's like, yeah, he's okay. Everybody's like, I like him or I hate him.
absolutely.
And he said something like, if you treat if you treat your life right, being right, it's almost like a taking a test, right? You just want to be right. And life's not a test, right? Like you have to, I personally feel like you have to explore, right, the limitations almost. Because right now, if you look at the current situation, right, we have a president running candidate who was almost shot, right? We have a scientifically reviewed paper, right, against vaccine that was taken down. All of these are controversies that any brand or even a personality could shoot off, right? Like they could use that particular
Hmm.
situation to exponentially grow.
Yes.
um, and they definitely don't have to be on the right side of the things,
But now, okay,
right? They could be wrong.
leveraging a controversy or leveraging something like this can be a
Hmm.
tool, but going out of
Yeah.
your way to create one, so certain things cannot just, you couldn't create and say that, oh yeah, we purposely set up a sniper on the roof to take the shot, and he was going to turn his head at this exact moment, and we're basically faking the assassination attempt.
Isaac, imagine if that was an arms manufacturer company.
Well, okay, let's go ahead and take, no, like, this is actually an example.
No,
I believe it
I'm
was,
just saying, just imagine if a arms manufacturing company was like, that was our sniper and we are shit.
they go bankrupt. But again, but that, if you're deliberately trying to create controversy, let's think about. I believe it might
Yeah.
be Remington. It was a gun
Hmm.
manufacturing company after the Sandy Hook situation in the United States about a decade ago.
Hmm.
They ended up going bankrupt as a company because of the situation, because it was a Remington gun, if I'm not mistaken, that was used during that shooting.
Hmm.
So and these are examples of situations that are outside of a brand's control. You cannot control what person purchases your product or purchases your item, or goes and acts. And this is why also hiring is important, because if you're hiring people, they're reflections of your business, they're reflections of your atmosphere, of your culture. And these are intricacies that people don't think about and take into consideration, but they're examples of you, they're reflections of you.
Yes. Yeah. I can give a leveraging example. Um, if you saw the whole clip, right? Did you notice that there was a CIA person who was struggling to put their gun inside their holster?
Yeah, and she
Did
got
you see that?
brutalized on the internet. Like,
Right
and
now, all the self defense companies are using that as a clip. They're saying, if you don't want to be this,
but
use it.
that's
You know.
strategically done. You're building off of controversy, and you're saying, oh, and
Yeah.
these are things that takes a really witty and very aware person in order to come up
Hmm.
with, because
Yeah.
you wouldn't just be able to take that situation and be like, and force a meme like it works. Like I know Twitter, for example, whenever something goes off in the news, people on Twitter are the first to create a response that's just witty and it's funny and it's viral. And there's absolutely nothing about the assassination attempt that's funny, but the
Yeah.
outcome of how people are responding to it is really
Hmm.
interesting to watch from a human perspective. And the show's called Sapient.
Hmm.
It's like we're really seeing the darkest side of people come out in this
Hmm.
situation, and how
Yeah.
now what was culturally one way a couple years ago of like, oh, we can say whatever we want, or you shouldn't say this. Now it's like you're saying the same exact things and you're becoming the people that you were criticizing a couple years ago. And as an American, these are things about our culture and about our current state that
Hmm.
it's almost like building a business at scale. Like, the United States is an organism, and seeing how that organism functions, every business is an organism itself. It's like, how does that business
Hmm.
function?
Yep. So I feel like, right, because I'm Indian and whatever I say amounts totally up to zero shits, right? What I observe is, right, there is no place for conversation in any typical, highlighted events in US. You cannot talk about the shootings, you cannot talk about racism, you cannot talk about slavery. Like,
Hmm.
it's like it's like just fucking talk. Is because if you look at South Africa, right, they went through a harder period of apartheid than US, right? um but they talk about it, they joke about it.
Hmm.
So even the upcoming generation knows what happened. They have some idea. uh, Compared to a kid in US, he or she has to learn it through textbooks. That's all, because it's not relevant in general conversations. And when they grow up to be adults, they do not know how to handle, I would say, a sensitive situation, right? Because it's almost like, now, if you make fun of the shooting, right, Trump supporters say fuck you, right? And if you don't talk about the shooting enough, the other people say fuck you. Like, there is no place for genuine conversation of why did it happen,
Well,
or
I
was it even
believe,
necessary.
yeah, and Ganesh, I believe that there's a difference between having a reasonable conversation and offering genuine debate and genuine rhetorical conversation going back and forth versus purposely creating controversy. And the reason why in America
Hmm.
we aren't able to have these conversations is not that we're physically incapable of doing so. It's not that we can. It's
Yes.
not that we're not smart, but it's that we're
Hmm.
emotional. And it's that
Yeah, and also I would say your ideology doesn't allow that. In today's American ideology of tribalism, right? Where it's
today's,
like,
but not
yeah,
tomorrow's.
today's.
Because
Yeah,
it's a
who
pendulum that's
knows about
swinging back,
tomorrow?
though, because now
Exactly.
you see that, oh, now you told me that we couldn't say this because this was somehow messed up or this is politically incorrect. The jokes that we used to
Yes.
say in high school or the jokes
Yeah,
we used to say in
exactly.
middle school, I shouldn't even be having this conversation because I'd be canceled, right? And I wasn't even the worst out of the group. So I'm thinking, and you're thinking about this, but the intention in which you're saying this is not in a way that is hateful, but there's a difference between a
Yes.
joke and purpose intent to harm.
Hmm.
That's what people need to
Yeah.
understand. And so
Yeah.
America is in this interesting period where having these conversations isn't about tribalism, but it's about we are all
Hmm.
American. Because I think about traveling across the world, and whether you're
Hmm.
a Black American, an Indian American, a Native American, or a white American, and you go to France or you go to India or whatever, you're going to be like, no,
Hmm.
that's an American. Oh, that's not.
Hmm.
If you were to see a Black American and a white American, you're not going to say, oh, that's a Black American. That's an African American.
Yes.
You're going to say that's an American, right? And
Yes.
so all of our issues are coming off of the back of
Hmm.
we have had nothing else to bitch about. And that's why in a
Yeah.
situation that we're in, and something I'm personally afraid of, is the only way that I see us uniting is a war on the home front. And that's not
Hmm.
even that's based off of historical precedents to where During
Yeah.
World War II, we did not have time to argue about our little differences. It was we're
Yeah.
against a united enemy. And that's how we came
Hmm.
together. And I feel like
Yeah.
America needs to understand how we can have a conversation based off of logic and based off of reason and based off of
Hmm.
actual genuine pursuit of knowledge and clarity versus, oh, you said something and I'm emotionally offended.
Yeah.
I need, an emotional support animal.
So I need to cancel you now.
Exactly. And that's
Right.
avoidance. That's an avoidance of problem. And that's a victim
Yeah.
culture. And I think that even when building a business and a prospect tells you no, you're not about to be like, fuck that prospect. I hate that dude. Why did he tell me no? You need to look internally and say, what about my process could have been improved? If my
Yeah. Or
post did
maybe
not go
he was just
viral,
not interested. Right.
yeah.
Or
Well,
maybe he was just not interested.
why did my post not go viral? Or why did that
Yeah.
prospect say no? And you look internally and you get better
Hmm.
from that. And
Yeah.
when it comes to our society, we've stopped looking inward and thinking, what could be different? What could be better? What could be improved?
Yeah. Yeah. It almost feels like, because I'm sitting from, I would say, in a spectator stand, right,
Hmm.
looking at a game. Um, it almost feels like, right, people are like this. You can have a conversation as long as it suits, the particular situation.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that's not how people talk, right? If you had five people over, talking about something, there would be one crazy piece of shit who would say the most absurd things.
Hmm.
Like, you cannot control him and say, oh, you cannot say that. You're like, fuck you, man, that's my opinion, and that's what I said, what I said, right? But the current situation, because I'm very interested in, American politics, of course, just like the rest of the world. uh, right, it seems like a buffoon circus, because it's like people are talking about wrong points, right?
Hmm.
Things that they should not even worry about, um, rather than the cause of it. Like, people were like, how the fuck did, the secret services sniper did not notice a person laying on,
Hmm.
on the top of a building? I'm like, that's not the question you should be asking. The question you should be asking is, right, what's wrong with today's political landscape that has led to this,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's, as you said, it's more of an internal question than trying to control the external parameters.
Right. Well, and you think about politics is a game of optics. It's not a game of what actually gets done. It is what is perceived as getting done. And
Yep.
business should not be a game of optics in so much as a game of execution.
Hmm.
And you think about when a politician is trying to get elected, they're getting elected off of their personal brands and what they connect. So, for example, in a large degree, when Barack
Hmm.
Obama got elected, he got elected because he was African American, the first African American president. Like, great. It wasn't even off of policies. It was off of an emotional decision based off of, something that is the lowest capability of connection. A person's skin color, not
Hmm.
off the fact he was American or any of these things. It was no, he's an African
Was he
American.
American?
Okay, another time, another time. Um, damn you,
Did
Ganesh.
you find the birth certificate?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, even then, this is why I don't
It
do
sounds
podcasts
it
at 10 p.m. at night. Uh,
Yeah, it sounds so silly, right? Because the whole country was built on the back of foreign people.
yeah.
And now you're like, show me a birth certificate, come on, show me.
Well, it's also like you could have a religious conversation about that too. In America, it's like America is
Hmm.
the land of religious freedoms until it's not Christian,
Exactly.
and it's like no, and I view that as no. Okay, it was. I don't care if you're Muslim. I don't care if you're Christian. I don't care if you're Hindu. I don't care if you're Sikh. I don't care if you're Buddhist. Whatever it could be. It's like if you're here and you're
Yeah.
practicing good. I think it's more about a conversation of ideologies being impressed upon culture to where
Hmm.
okay, now if you're an American you might not want to have Islamic policies pressed upon you on a personal level to where it's like being taught in schools.
Yeah.
I can understand your argument, but at the
Hmm.
same point you're also looking to do the same with Christian ideologies. And so but
Hmm.
again, you cannot have this conversation typically without there being an emotional attachment here, and the emotion gets in the way of logic. But thinking about business, taking this back to marketing or what sales, 80% of sales is emotion based. So if you're selling a prospect, are you selling them off of this is what we can do for you on a strategic lens and step one, two, three, and four, the guarantees versus a Do you want to be famous? How good would that feel?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's like
Yeah.
what would sell better? And in
Mm-hmm.
PR, there is this entire guru space of fake Forbes articles and fake press articles and fake followers and botted accounts and all this because it was the instant gratification and the perception of things versus having a genuine
Mm-hmm.
strong, you know, brand or business or
Mm-hmm.
personal brand. And
Yeah.
these are the things that we have to set the emotions aside and look at what will actually work long term. And that's where you get policy that is effective versus policy that is,
Mm-hmm.
in your words, like a circus, to where it's like you're dancing around
Yes.
the issue, like you're putting the bear in the middle and saying, I hope you don't bite me. And that's what our American
Yes.
politics system is today. It's a game of,
Mm-hmm.
I hope you don't turn on me.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you brought religion, right? And because you brought religion up, I think you're saying, oh no, but it's not that kind of question. Somebody asked Jordan Peterson, are you religious? And he said that's the most personal question you could ask a person.
Hmm.
You could ask a human, right? It's almost like going to somebody who is like a random person and asking what size your dick. It's so personal, right, that people will get offended. But but that being said, um yeah, the whole part of religion, right, that even we look at marketing or even in politics, right, it's not religion as religion, right? It's not religion, it's just a vague feeling of religion, right?
Hmm.
Oh, I connect with you because you're Christian. Oh, I connect with you because you're a Muslim. That's what politicians do. And the reason I brought this up is that's what most brands do, right?
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not, and this is why too. For example, during June, how many brands make it, a rainbow flag Pride Month, and then
Almost all of them.
the rest of the year, it's like, whatever. It's pandering. You're pandering to an
Yes.
audience for a specific period of time to try to gain business or try to look good, versus
Hmm.
these are our actual set beliefs that we believe in, that we stand behind. And it's, you know again, it's like, should a business put black owned business or LGBTQ business or woman
Hmm.
owned or minority owned or disabled accessible, like, should you put all of these different things? And this is a
Hmm.
conversation that I've never heard anybody really discuss at scale because it's uncomfortable. But it's like, are you using that as a crutch to try to look good, or are you genuinely standing behind those beliefs?
Hmm. Yeah, I would say it also depends on the context of the brand, right? Like, where does the brand stem from? What are its principles?
Well, it's like the boutique coffee shop that posts their income stream. That boutique
Yeah.
store is never going to be the national franchise.
Yes.
So you think about that local coffee shop that might be LGBTQ owned and woman owned and whatever, that is local in the community. Well, cool. You have communal roots. People know you as such. They believe in what you do, or they don't believe in what you do, and they won't support you because of it. But you set yourself up. But you're not going to necessarily go and try to become that national franchise. And then that's where it can look
Hmm.
like a gimmick or look like pandering. And
Yeah.
again, that's like, these are all conscious decisions that you need to set and make
Hmm.
based off of where you're trying to go or what you're trying to build, versus
Hmm.
building your personal brand. For example, there's a hierarchy to where you could become the local hero and you're locally known in your town, your city, your township, whatever, but you might not be
Hmm.
the international icon or the national personality. And so where do you
Yeah.
want to go with this? How big do you want to
Hmm.
take it? And then you can reverse engineering the steps in order to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, because you brought a coffee shop up. Do you know that there was a socialist coffee shop in US?
That was based off of tips only, and it ended up going bankrupt or like closing down within like a month, right? If I remember the story properly. Yeah.
Exactly. They closed within like 90 days of the business because they were not profitable.
Well,
They could not even sustain
that's an
it,
example
you
of the
know.
actual government structure. And like, do you really think that's going to work? Do you really think that's efficient? Um,
Yeah.
it's like somebody locally, or not locally, but somebody on Twitter that I follow just out of curiosity, because you need to get multiple perspectives. You don't want to just follow your typical beliefs, which I typically would fall underneath a lot of social conservatism, or fiscal conservatism. And sometimes, a couple years ago, I would say I'd lean a little bit more left socially, but now it's like, no, it's
Hmm.
like how far that left has leaned is too far for me to even think I'm close. So it's like, no, like I need to be somewhere in the middle, leaning to the right. But again, he's like, we're
Hmm.
launching the American Communist Party, and I'm like, have you learned nothing? Have you learned nothing over the past 50 years of as a student of history, thinking about, okay, the USSR wasn't great, Mao in China
Yeah.
wasn't great, and you're thinking about these, you know, history is a teacher that we continue to ignore.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. I feel like you people went to war for that, against that, right?
Yeah. And it's fascinating to have this conversation with you as like an Indian outsider perspective, because
Yeah.
again, it's like if you travel and go and get well versed, but most Americans, like
Hmm.
the majority of Americans, never leave the United States. And it's like, but if you go to other places in the world and you ask them, what do you think about America? Their perception of how they view us is entirely different than how we view ourselves. And it's like,
Yeah, because 48% of Americans think they can fight a lion. So yeah, that makes sense.
give me some beer and some brass knuckles. Let's see what's going on. But I suppose that's also what makes America great in
Yeah.
the sense of nationalism, and the sense of pride, and the sense of this is America has always been that superpower basically from inception. The idea of the American Revolution and the principles of the 13 colonies was rebellion. It was off of the backs of, you tell me to do something, we're not going to do it. And now we
Yeah.
have entered into this age of being basically pacifists, where, oh no,
Hmm.
it's like we can get ordered around or bossed around, and now we're getting taxed 40-50% off of every dollar we make. And it's like, oh, that's okay,
Nice.
everything's good. And it's like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
meme of the dog sitting in the cafe and the cafe's burning down. It's like, this is great. No, it's
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
And we need to,
It's
again,
not.
have these fucking conversations that can help push
Yeah.
progress forward.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like, because I have read a little bit of history, I feel like most of Americans don't realize why America is great, right? And my perspective is, US is one of those countries where anything can work, right? Like, US is a country which made OnlyFans work. Imagine. Selling foot pics worked. And that's what America is about. You can you can do anything and still be successful,
Hmm.
right? Because it allows you the space to do anything you want to.
Yeah.
And now it's becoming more of a cancel culture, where you're like, if I don't agree with you, I'll cancel you.
Which is,
But that extent only goes to online, right? Oh,
hmm.
look at that actor, you know he got he did not get a role because he was on the left or on the right. I'm like, okay, that's okay, but that's not what's supposed to happen.
Well, and
Right.
cancel culture too it's not something that's new. It's something that we think is new. But I was listening to something the other day, and they mentioned how the first person who was canceled in history was Jesus Christ. He was canceled by the government and ultimately crucified. Like, if you, it's a genuine statement here, though. But you think about it, he was canceled by the
Hmm.
politicians and then canceled by the people, and look at what stemmed from that cancellation.
He got cancelled.
He did. But
Yeah,
then think
so
about the
you
outcome.
yeah, you could call it as the most brutal cancellation, right?
That right there, I mean, that could be the title of the conversation, the most brutal cancellation in history, an interview with Isaac Mashman. But it's genuine. If you think about this, the government figures and Pontius Pilate, and they were like, okay, we're going to kill you and crucify you, and we're canceling you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
He
from
was like,
there,
but he was like, no, I got like double subscription.
well,
I am coming back.
it turned into a martyr situation, right? And isn't
Yeah.
that the entire perception of Christianity? And the belief is there was a martyr who took that weight onto
Hmm.
himself. Just like if Donald
Yeah.
Trump if he was to be killed in that
Hmm.
assassination attempt, he would have become a martyr, which would have literally
Hmm.
led America, in my opinion, to civil war almost instantaneously.
Yes. So, Isaac, let me make you controversial. Are you comparing Donald Trump to Jesus?
Absolutely not. I'm not about to say that he's the Messiah. There are plenty of things I love and agree with him on, and plenty of things I disagree with him on. I know that as a
Yeah.
fact, I was making, it was easier to make sales. It was,
Hmm.
I feel like everybody had more money. I
Hmm.
feel like there were no wars because there weren't.
Yeah.
We weren't, there wasn't a war in Ukraine, there wasn't a war between
Hmm.
Israel and Palestine. We had, yes, we had COVID, which we could have an entire debate about in of itself in the situation there. But I think about, it's not a, for the longest time America has been choosing the least evil out of two evils, and it's a recipe for disaster in my opinion. Rather than a unifying
Yeah.
vision, I feel like this is the first time in a long time where there is
Hmm.
some degree of unification that might be
Hmm.
happening based off of what we
Yeah.
could build versus just simply existing or simply living.
Hmm. Yeah. But I also feel like the reason Trump got elected is, I think it's one core reason. It's people could not gauge him. People could not measure him, right? Because every other candidate was a stable person, not saying random shit and tweeting out, like weirdest thing at the midnight.
Hmm.
And they found this one person who ran WWE back then, right? Do you remember those days when he used to be in wrestling, right?
Hmm.
you know and you could see even back then he was not a typical human being, right? Like he had something about him. And I feel like that kind of fascination is what led to somewhat of popularity in him, right? Because people could not understand him, and you couldn't predict what he was going to do next.
Well, he had a good balance of, again, personal brand of, the person was fiery, unhinged, controversial, ballsy,
You are
loud.
fired.
Right.
That's the famous line.
Exactly. But then you also had the track record of business. Oh, he had bankruptcies. Well, a lot of businesses go bankrupt, a lot of, and yeah, sometimes restructuring a company through bankruptcy is the best way forward. Red Lobster in the United States, Toys R Us, Radio Shack, all these businesses have been bankrupted in order to restructure for a better way forward. And it's
Hmm.
like, you cannot base an entire, unless it's something so egregious, you cannot base an entire person's life and how they are off of one mistake or off of one thing that occurred. And
Yeah, but also it's not a crime
well,
to
no,
go
it's not a
bankrupt.
crime, but you would be able to, again, though, in communism, you find the person and you find the crime. You don't find the crime and then punish the person. It's backwards. And
Yeah.
in business, and this is why I said you usually would like to avoid deliberate controversy versus having that well-timed joke, because Trump was
Hmm.
not purposely trying to
Yes.
be controversial. He was just having the well-timed jokes and being him, and that is what built him this fan base that is on fire as, almost like
Hmm.
this religious figure, not a
Yeah.
Jesus Christ figure, but he is almost has this religious cult following.
Yeah, QAnon, right?
No.
Do you remember that?
But okay, it's all relative based off of what you view it as. It's subjectivity based on, and it's
Man,
relative on where you're at.
I'm an Indian. Whatever the fuck you people do doesn't affect me.
Well,
So I view it as just an event and just history. That's all.
yeah. Well, okay. So it's like if we were having the conversation, and it's like Trump would be like, "What level of the caste system are you?" Like that would be something like he would create a joke, and it's not that he's trying to be ill-conceived, but he's like
Yeah.
having a joke, and it leads in, and
Yeah.
humor is like, again, the difference here is I'm trying to hurt you with this joke
Hmm.
versus I'm making the joke because it's fucking funny, right? And it's
Yeah.
like getting to that point, and even me having the willingness to make that kind of joke or create that, it's like,
Hmm.
my intention is not to
Yeah.
disrespect you. My intention is,
Exactly.
it's humor, right? And
Yeah, man. And I feel like humor is the best way to go through trauma.
it
As a country, as a society, as a human also, right? you know let's say your best friend gets into an accident, and once he is alive, right?
yeah. Well,
That's it, right?
and based off of your humor, Ganesh, I'm curious to know what trauma you've
Hmm.
been through.
Oh, a lot.
Oh man. uh
Yeah, I mean, I'm Gen Z, dude, come on. So my previous generations fucked me with housing costs. Right? My future generation is fucking me with pronouns and mental health. So yeah,
Glad to know
I
that
feel
also is in
Gen Z.
India too, not just here. We're united.
Oh yeah, people are making sure here it doesn't come here,
Hmm.
but it's really coming. Yeah,
So
because in
where
India
do you see
same-sex marriage is legal.
where do you see the business entrepreneur culture evolving in India? Do you see something like that taking place over the next
Yeah,
decade?
because we have produced 21 unicorns in the last one financial year. 21 unicorn is a very big deal for any country, right? US did around 18 or 19, I feel like. China did 24. We are at 21.
Now,
So
now,
it
now, go ahead and
feels like,
break that down into an American term, metric versus
so you so unicorn is any business that achieves $1 billion valuation.
okay. That's what I was okay.
So it's like US produced 19, China was like 24, and we are in right in between around 21.
Okay.
And um, startup culture is very intense in India, because SoftBank, right, the startup investors, they are heavily into Indian market. And you know now Indian capitalist society is very different, because India is a very cost conscious market.
Hmm.
Like you cannot use luxurious words and sell shit here. It doesn't work. That's why iPhone is cheaper in India, because you cannot say it's the most luxurious thing and people will buy it. No, India is a very cost driven market, cost conscious, but because we have a lot of competition,
Hmm.
whatever you want to sell, right? Because there is commies that trying to come in, right? Chinese, Russian. There are capitalists, like Western countries, and indigenous, our own, companies. So that drive is there, because from 14-15, this particular government has been trying to push the ecosystem for startups, where they like will provide you subsidies, will provide you grants, relief, tax
Hmm.
honeymoons, free spaces, technology help, everything. It's for free. Just do something. And that's how we have seen so much growth, insane amount of growth.
Hmm.
Because before this we were reliant on IT, right? For example, you hired a VA and I would be your VA, right? Like that's how we earned our money, through foreign exchange. Now it's more of indigenous products being pushed.
Hmm.
For example, the NHS, right, the national health system of UK, their whole IT is handled by one Indian company.
Hmm.
So it's like, you're able to make that link, right, where you're like, okay, we are the IT backbone of the world, and that's where we are going right now in terms of direction. Yeah, man. But I feel like any business that can survive in India can survive anywhere, because it's a very cutthroat market, right, where it's very cost conscious, even in marketing, even digital marketing, right? It's a very cutthroat business, uh, because there are so many agencies, unbelievable amount of marketing agencies out here. So yeah, that's why I said India is a very different kind of capitalistic market, because if you try to monetize everything, it won't work,
Hmm.
right? Because I see United States capitalism and its extreme capitalism, right? Do you need my help? There is a cost, right? Like, and there are certain things that people just don't accept in India. It's like, nah, I'm not going to do that.
Well, I think our quality of life and living has been better based off of
Yes.
industrialization for a long time, and now the industrialization of India. I imagine 100 years from now, though, India will go from cost cautious to
Hmm.
consumerism. And I believe,
I don't think so.
really,
I
you
don't
think
think so.
that
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, because being cost conscious is like our DNA.
okay,
It's what Indians are for. It's what Indians are famous for. It's like juice, money. Like it's like India and cost conscious are very. It's not because people cannot afford it, but they don't want to spend more money on it.
interesting. Which is the complete opposite of America because it's not based off of necessarily even what is the best, more so what is perceived as the best. So Apple is not the best
Yes.
iPhone or the best phone in the market for, let's say, the camera. You could look and argue the
Yeah.
fact that Samsung probably has a better camera than iPhone, but that does not matter because it's iPhone, it's the brand, it's the feeling, it's the emotion behind it, which again is a lot of what I think our entire
Yeah.
conversation tonight has been about, has been the
Hmm.
perception is more important than the actual execution. And that is,
Yeah, but it also, like, iPhone is American, right?
yeah, well, ironically, and even though it's not even produced in America, designed in San Francisco and
Yeah.
put together in India or Vietnam or
China.
China. It's
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and again, it's how many of our items in America are built in China? And you think about, I've listened to or read books in the past. For example, Andrew Carnegie's The Empire of Business, which is a compilation of his essays and letters that he wrote. And I have a copy behind me that was, I believe, a 1913 edition. But in the book, he talks about, or it could be 1931, he talks about how American products were typically cheaper. And this was written
Mm-hmm.
100 years ago, his essays, right? Andrew Carnegie, the great American industrialist, and about how American products were cheaper and imported products were more expensive and they were perceived as
Yeah.
better. And we flipped
Mm-hmm.
over the past 100 years to where now imported products are cheaper and the quality is less, and American
Yeah.
products are more expensive and the quality is
Mm-hmm.
better. And so it's like
Yes.
we flipped as a society and as a culture to where, again, it's less about cost consciousness and more about
Mm-hmm.
how is this going to make us look, which is why you buy the same
Yeah.
iPhone year after year after year, when the one from 2, 3, 4 years ago, as long as Apple's not throttling it, is just fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah, but
fascinating.
also it's like, if you look at iPhone, there has been absolutely zero revolution in iPhone in the past 6 to 8 years.
Yeah, very little.
But right, from iPhone X or 10, whatever you want to call it as, to iPhone 15, there is no difference,
Mhm.
to be honest. Right? It's the same bionic chips. It's the same speed. Yeah,
Similar
it's like
design.
very minimal. Yeah, moving forward, but people still buy it because one of the things is it's American and it has goodwill.
Hmm. Now, what do you see
Right?
about? Do you see this Indian hustle culture evolving too?
Indians are hustlers by by default. So it's like, yeah, because we banned TikTok in 2018.
Okay.
So we don't have TikTok culture, at least here, but we have Instagram and other you know influencer culture.
Basically, I'm asking, am I going to see a bunch of Ganesh Dadas posing in front of rented Rolls Royces and saying that in your accent, this is how you can become a millionaire? Like, is that a thing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. People are already doing it.
Interesting.
Yeah, there is a guy called as Iman Gadvi. He's like, of course, what you just said. He's the exact definition of
Yeah.
that. He's like, I can help you become a millionaire by the age of 30.
Hmm.
I just want to talk to him and I want to say I'm 29. How do I do it in a year?
Man,
just to poke him.
my sense of humor is like, man, if this was 50 years ago, if it was to come out and be like, this is how you can go from this level in the cast to this level in the cast, it's like that's effectively like what it is. It's like pandering. I know that's so politically
Yeah.
incorrect, man, but it's
It doesn't matter because caste it doesn't exist anymore in India. So they're like, yeah, man, whatever the fuck you want to do.
but again, you think about like again, like what Americans would view. It's like,
Isaac, Indians are very chill people. You could literally
yeah, well,
shit on their face. They would be like, yeah, man, whatever. We have taken 800 years of foreign invasion. It's okay. That- Seriously, that's the attitude of people.
oh man,
You know,
well. Hire you for IT, but I might not hire you for HR. Might be.
yeah.
Oh man, this is wonderful. It's refreshing as well to have a good banter
Mhm.
that's distant,
yeah
I
i feel
suppose.
yeah I feel like that's required for humans, right, to grow their openness,
Hmm.
right? Because when a person says I'm open, how open are you? Are you open for communists? Are you open for extreme liberty? How much are you open?
Yeah,
And people don't have that scale, right? Because it's not something that they can quantify.
yeah.
But I feel like when you talk to people, right, from far far away from your home, you get to know your quantifying of your openness.
Hmm.
You're like, yeah, I'm open to communism, but just not in my country. Right? I'm just giving it an example, right? Like, that's how you quantify openness.
Well, it's like Americans and oil and democracy. There's oil. There has to be democracy. Let's throw the CIA in there, and but it's like the fact that that's even a joking matter and something that you as an Indian know as a fact is concerning. And yeah, man,
Have you seen that Key and Pele episode where they're
no,
like,
no,
my lord, every day we are facing human right threats. He's like, United States is with you in ideology, and he's like, they're kidnapping and raping our women every day. He's like, we are with you ideologically. And then he says, and we found oil. And the American eagle sound comes in, and he's like, Operation Freedom is a go.
But again, I suppose that's what
Guess
makes us
what,
great.
Isaac? Guess what? I just saw the news. Guess what? Guess who is getting the contract to build Ukraine?
Hmm. Who?
BlackRock and JP Morgan.
Oh, that's wonderful. Good for them. They can purchase up more independent housing over there too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they can definitely afford, to eat. Yeah.
We could talk about that for hours on end about like the limits of capitalism versus what should be controlled and what should be relegated or regulated,
But
excuse me.
Isaac, do you think that American form of capitalism is extreme capitalism?
I do, and I think that capitalism is a double-edged sword. Same thing with like you could be famous, and
Hmm.
because you're famous, make more money, but you might not be able to walk into your local grocery store without being recognized. So there's
Yeah.
a drawback to that fame, and I think that capitalism is
Yeah.
along those same lines of, for example, a corporation can purchase independent houses and purchase, independent homes and single family homes and things of that as,
Hmm.
things to rent out. And is that proper? Is it proper to have a large and increasing majority of housing owned by a corporation versus single families or versus
Yeah.
independent households? I do not agree
Owned
that
by
that's
Chinese,
proper. Yeah,
owned by
or
foreign
well, exactly.
nationals.
But am I able to tomorrow go to India and be like, I want to purchase all this property? Can I
Nope.
purchase a piece of property next to a military base?
Yeah. No, you cannot.
Yeah, but now we can allow Chinese nationals to purchase up property next to a base here in the United States.
Yeah,
And
and also essentially own the whole Hollywood.
yeah,
That's a far more serious thing because, see, I think it was in WikiLeaks where there was a document that was a study which said that Hollywood essentially the propaganda machine of capitalism, like like of America, because that's how we push our ideology. Now imagine all of it is owned by Chinese.
but why does that work? It's the people that are pushing that message. And because of
Yeah.
celebrities, again, this distance between, going back to the conversation earlier, is
Hmm.
they are the people that we can trust. These are the voices of
Yes.
us because they are famous, because they are well known, because they are
Hmm.
respected. So,
Yeah.
who are the kids, the 12-year-olds, the 13-year-olds, the 11-year-olds going to look to for guidance and
Hmm.
morals and ideologies, if not the parents and
Yeah.
if not the
Hmm.
nuclear family? They're going to look to these public figures. And
Hmm.
that can be
Yeah.
dangerous. And so again, it's like if you control the propaganda, you
Hmm.
control everything. And this is one of the
Yeah.
risks that, in Edward Bernays' book, the propaganda, which came out early in the 1900s, he talks about how, our society is controlled by groupthink and by, our society actively basically acts as one and
Yes.
is able to be influenced as such.
Yep.
That we have puppet masters behind the scenes that are basically pulling the
Hmm.
strings and calling the shots. And it's not that there's some cabal that's behind us, behind the United
Hmm.
States, in so much as a collection of companies that have power and a collection of people that have power.
Hmm.
And once you have power, you have
Yeah.
influence.
Yeah, that's why I want to ask a Hollywood person, like, is it possible to shoot or release a movie like Interview today? You remember that movie where
What was
he
it
goes
called?
to North Korea? Interview.
Uh, is that the
The North Korean dictator, he
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
goes
yeah,
there
yeah,
and
yeah. I think I remember that one
yeah.
briefly, or let's say Dictator, right? I know that when
Yes,
Dictator
yes.
came out, Aladdin or
Yeah.
Aladdin or whatever the bullshit was, right? That right there, 10 years ago, came out and everybody loved it. But now, it's like if you
Yeah.
release it today, it'd be like, oh my god, this is this is something that's going to cause the civilization to collapse, kind of thing. And it's crazy how much
Right?
has changed in 10 years.
Yeah, but my observation is, would even Chinese allow a movie like Interview, which is based on North Korean dictator, right? Would it be even be allowed today?
Well, I don't know if I would agree that China necessarily owns Hollywood, but it's the
Hmm.
same thing as music. For example, Universal Music Group is the record label everybody knows, but they don't know that Universal Music Group is owned in large part by a French company. I believe it's
Yeah.
called Vivendi, if I'm not mistaken. That might be the name of the company, but they own a large part of UMG. And again, it's like
Hmm.
the brands that you purchase off the shelf are owned by another brand, and there's a hierarchy to
Yes.
this. It's like,
Yeah.
and once you kind of take a step back and view this from a macro lens of, wow, this is how all of our society functions and works together, you realize that everything is owned by something. It's owned by something. It's owned by something that has another person
Yeah.
making decisions. And our entire world operates on such a small thread. And thinking about earlier this week when CrowdStrike by Microsoft went down, it's like the world went up in flames, and that's one company.
Yes.
Now imagine the
Yeah. Yeah.
infrastructure of an entire nation going down and how much would be affected.
Hmm. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. I think we are living in the most exciting part of history
Mm.
because we're just on the cusp of destroying each other by saying just fuck you. Right? Because today, even I would say most around 6 to 8 countries have the capability to say fuck you and destroy the world, including India. So it's like, yeah, let's see.
Imagine that
Let's
the
see how
world
calm
goes up
could
in
we
flames
be.
because some Indians like fuck you and presses the button.
Fuck
Like,
you. That's it. Yeah.
oh man,
Yeah.
it's
I
and
mean,
it's fascinating too because now that artificial intelligence has begun to take place, we try to predict what
hmm,
artificial intelligence will make our society look like, and what it will be like in 100
yeah.
years. And it's impossible to think about. It's
Yeah.
we have these ideas based off of science fiction like the Terminator or the Matrix, when artificial intelligence
Hmm.
could be something entirely different because it's on another layer of being. It's almost a spiritual being in the sense of there's no comprehension. It's like you try to
Hmm.
comprehend God. What is God? Well, it's not, he's not some floating guy with a beard and a robe on a cloud. That is not God.
Hmm.
And it's like,
Are you describing me?
well, yeah, right. God's Indian. Imagine. Uh,
Isaac, I have an opinion about AI, right? I feel like it's like, do you remember the .com bubble we had in the early 2000s?
yeah.
I feel like that's what AI is. It's just a bubble. It's not as exaggerated as people think it is. Because no AI company is making money right now, and they're spending crazy amount of money. It's not sustainable, right? Because GPT acquired customers at the rate of 680 times faster than Google,
Mm,
right? Google took 12 years to build the same amount of followers or users as GPT did in 18 months.
that is true.
18 years. So it's like it doesn't make sense anymore, right? People are just using it for left and right. Now, if you look at WhatsApp, there is AI to respond to people. And I feel like it's like this, right? Back then, you remember, for everything you had a website, right? That's the .com bubble. And now that's what is happening with AI, right?
Well, in
Do you
artificial
want a
intelligence,
girlfriend?
in my
You have an
opinion,
AI.
I believe that AI is meant to do. It's meant to be integrated, but not meant to be the thing that's doing the heavy lifting. So thinking about like lifting weights, right? Let's say you're bench pressing. You
I don't think so, Isaac. I don't
really,
think so.
I believe that's
Yeah,
meant to
because
be integrated,
OpenAI,
but not to be a
the s-
replacement in so much.
the CTO of OpenAI just said that, um, humans should do all the basic work and creativity should be up to AIs.
Hmm.
Because she said, if you can draw and if I cannot draw, and she used a word that it irritated me. She said, artists gatekeep skills. Could you imagine saying that out of your mouth?
Hmm.
Saying artists are gatekeeping skills. Like she just went on like 10 minutes rant where she said, you know I cannot draw, but an artist can draw, but
But
I need to draw, so I will
artificial
use AI. So it's better for us to leave all the creative work to AI and just do basic things for humans.
But what was the foundation of that language model and of that artificial intelligence? It was the foundation.
Creative input of humans.
Exactly. So we're still the foundational piece, but I view artificial intelligence as when you're lifting a weight and bench pressing or squatting a new personal record, you have a spotter there to make sure that they can help you up if you fall down, or they're there to say go go go, motivate you to
Mhm.
maybe lift up some of the weight and make it to where it's more efficient. I view artificial intelligence as the spotter for mankind, to where we're still the backbone, but artificial intelligence is the thing that's pushing us forward at a rate that we couldn't have reached alone. Now, could you be, and Brian Johnson from Blueprint, he's somebody who I've been following religiously over the past several months and listened to many of his
Hmm.
interviews about, not even biohacking is not what he likes to refer to it as, but if you cannot make the proper decision yourself on what you
Hmm.
should eat, when you should go to bed, all of these things, imagine if an
Hmm.
algorithm says you need to wake up at this time, you need to eat this, you need to avoid that, and you follow that
Hmm.
algorithm and you follow that AI strictly in order to get the best outcome for yourself. You're still the
Yes,
person
but
who has to
also,
implement it.
yeah, but also that artificial intelligence doesn't work on natural instincts, right?
It works off of logic and not emotion, and it
No,
eliminates
I'm
that.
talking about natural instincts. Maybe your forefathers were night hunters, so you do not fall asleep in the night. But the algorithm says go to sleep at night. It doesn't work for your body. It is probably injurious.
But wouldn't you
So
be able to say that that
are you
artificial?
are you gauging what I'm trying to say? I'm trying
I
to say is,
do, I do. But if you were to
right.
tell the AI and based off of a DNA data set, and it looks off of the historical precedence of where you're located and factors such as climate and skin color and how it's affected X,
Hmm.
Y, and Z, and then it takes into account the historical wars and religion and all of these things that we cannot
Yeah.
compute into a single algorithm ourselves. Imagine if an
Hmm.
artificial intelligence says all of these things and is able to say, all right, based off of this entire data set, this is the best way forward for you in this particular moment based off of
But
this time of the
still,
year and your body
yeah.
mass and everything. It's
Hmm.
incomprehensible compared to let me go to bed because I'm tired.
Yeah, but if you look at it, right, the dot com, the early internet era, was more democratized. Anybody could do it.
Mhm.
But AI is more corporation controlled.
This is true. As it stands right now, it is, or it's going to
No,
at
I,
least
I
be.
think it will be forever
Well,
because companies have realized the power behind AI. So they're like, you know what? We will have it for ourselves. They pretend to be open source, but they're not.
yeah, well, yeah, and you think about the amount of energy and power and land that is going to be required in order for all of this stuff to function. And just like
Yes.
in the Matrix, you have to have a power source, right? It's like,
Hmm.
again, it's like how many hundreds of thousands of
No, I
acres of
think,
land will.
I think, yeah, I think the problem with AI is not the power it requires, but rather the cooling, uh, you know, part of it, where you need a lot of fresh water. And once it cools out the servers, the water is contaminated, right, with radiation. You cannot use it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
But
think
I
we are
suppose
fucked
couldn't you
up. Yeah,
use artificial intelligence to provide the solution to that problem, though? Imagine you have all
I
this
don't think
information
so.
and you're saying AI.
Yeah, that's what the alt whatever his name is. He said, right, the founder of GPT. He said, I don't know how I'll earn money from this AI. I'll build this AI and then I'll ask the AI to find me ways to be profitable.
Isn't that so wild to even think that in our lifetime? And then 50 years from now, there's a show on Amazon called Upload. And I've only watched the first two seasons, but the concept of Upload is you have the real world and you have this digital world where you can get uploaded into this basically digital space and your consciousness is uploaded into a computer. And people in the real world are able to interact with you just like Sims. And you're getting into the realm of simulation theory, right? To where it's like, are we living in a simulation and how many layers of the simulation are we in? But the show Upload is fascinating because the only way I believe that anything such as that would be possible would be having to use artificial intelligence to compute problems that would take us trillions of years to be able to solve.
But I also feel like, Isaac, is any technology, right, when it comes into existence, right, the first few decades are when it grows the most, and if you look at it as a graph,
Mm-hmm.
and then it gets pretty flat. For example, space technology, right? Space technology grew between 60 to 90s, right? 60s to 90s,
Mm-hmm.
and then it became pretty flat, right? We came up with reusable rockets in 2014, right? And we are still working on that craft to be reusable. I feel like AI is, I think it's a similar, it will have a very quick growth of certain decade, like probably 20, 30 years, and then it will just go flat. Then it will be harder to come up with innovations, to keep it more efficient or
See, I
just be
disagree
more
though.
sustainable.
And I believe
Yeah.
that we can almost, even having this conversation and debating it almost makes us look ignorant because there's no way that we're able to predict what our world will look like. And I do believe, though, and I would fall underneath the schism of people that believe that AI is a net positive. I believe that, again, and that's one of the things that people are starting to talk about, of, the next 50 years, there's going to be these pro technology versus anti technology groups that start to develop, of like, oh, we're 100% off of Instagram, 100% off of social media, 100% off the internet, versus the we're pro internet, we're pro tech, we're pro all this stuff. I think that there will be a growing schism there. But the idea of AI will just continue to exponentially grow. And I don't think that,
Yeah, but the concept or the whole angle of AI is not democratic. It's more of an authoritarian thing.
yes,
It's like are you aware of this Chinese, okay, Chinese cafeterias where you had to smile to enter. You had to be happy.
I've seen something like that, or let's say an AI program through a security camera monitoring
Yes.
productive work. And yeah, there are absolutely negative use cases, or cases that would be more
Isaac,
authoritative.
Isaac, governments are known to make the best of negative impacts of a technology.
I think any idea that a
Right, you
government
look
is,
at
is going to
you
be able to
you look
do,
at MK16 Ultra,
yeah,
right? The testing that they did, or the gases that they produced, or the digital tapping that they have
yeah.
done of each and every individual. You know, it's like government tends to use absolute negative of things because they like control.
Which I suppose artificial intelligence will need regulation, and this would be going against a 100% pro-capitalist approach, to where maybe artificial intelligence is separated and owned by the people versus the two or three corporations that exist.
Yes,
But how do we
then
even
you're
approach
looking
that
at
problem?
I think it's very simple. You just decentralize AI.
Hmm.
Yeah, you say nobody can have copyrights, trademarks, or trade secrets of AI. It has to be open, or you don't do it.
Well, there is an entire conversation about cryptocurrency and the regulation thereof, and I feel like that has progressed nowhere. Where it's like we were talking about regulation for crypto, and it's like,
Hmm.
what has really come of that? Not much, aside from, okay, Ethereum's is a legitimate currency that can be traded, versus there hasn't really been any agreement on.
I think, Isaac, that particular conversation is only in United States.
Hmm, interesting.
For example, if you go to Bolivia, their currency is so dynamic that they use dollars. Imagine a foreign country using a foreign currency as the standard,
Right.
right? If you go to Kenya, right, they do not use their own currency. They use rand, which is like South African currency. So I think this conversation of regulating or is crypto really needed is only in United States, because most of the countries which US has invaded, or whatever, right, know the value of crypto, or foreign fiat currencies, because they do understand they are not stable enough, right, either to produce currency or to regulate
Of
currency of
course,
their own.
yeah. Which is a use case for cryptocurrency being brought in, to where it would
Which is
be,
definitely,
yeah,
definitely, because right now in Argentina, I think 60% of their gray economy is dependent on crypto.
yeah. Bitcoin
Gray is
specifically, if
like,
I'm not mistaken, or like El Salvador has committed to purchasing like a
yeah,
Bitcoin or something every month, or something like that. Um,
exactly. So
yeah,
it's like, they understand the value of crypto because they are so destabilized.
yeah,
And if the war in American frontier was to happen, I think people would really quickly realize the value of crypto or anything that's other than money.
yeah. It's definitely interesting, and I'm curious to see how not only the next 50 years, when I'm an old man,
Hmm.
um, or maybe we're uploaded into some
Yeah.
AI program. I don't know, whatever the next 50 years look like, versus even the next 5 years or the next 12 months. Is
Hmm.
we're entering into this unprecedented time. It's the equivalent of Galileo looking and seeing the stars, and being called some evil witch, or because a woman discovered a certain medicine, all of a sudden she's burned at the stake. Like, we're literally peasants in this current stage of evolution, and adaptation, and what we're creating. And I hope that, and this is kind of like my Elon Musk take, it's like, I hope that we do what is best, but
Hmm.
I don't know if It is in our
But best
nature
for who?
to do that. Well,
That's the
yeah, and
question.
that's relative because what could be best for us might
Yeah.
not be the best for you, or
Oil.
exactly. Well, no, I mean, I think about that too, and it's like we wonder why there are radical groups, and it's like if we haven't invaded countries for the past 50 years, there
Yeah.
wouldn't be so much radicalization. But again, these
Yeah.
situations create radical outcomes because we are not seeing it from. Imagine we're not the ones being invaded. Nobody steps foot on American
Exactly.
soil and invades us. Like in the
Yeah.
traditional sense of, let's say, going to Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria, it's like
Uh-huh.
it's incomparable. And again,
Hmm.
people here in the States have this degree of comfort because we're separated by the massive amounts of water in the oceans.
Yeah, but also it's like, right, Americans are cocky because they're isolated, they know that.
Yes.
And I see Americans always talk about Russia. They're like, fuck you, Russia. And I'm like, imagine if Russians did that, right? Because I think people have very short memory where they forgot like the Cuban missile
Hmm.
thing.
Well,
They just don't
and
remember it anymore.
Russia sent a nuclear submarine 66 miles off the
Yeah.
coast of Florida, right off of Cuba, and it's like
Yeah.
that.
In 1973, US wanted to blow up India. Do you know that? Like they dispatched 85% of their navy to India.
Hmm, you fucked up our
And
curry,
that's when,
man.
yeah, that's why. Yeah, because we want to develop our own nuclear. So
Yeah.
they were like, we will destroy you. And that's when Russia stepped up for India. And that's why if you look at Indian culture and
Mhm.
history, Russia is very close to us because we have traded with them for 8,000 years.
Yeah. When America's only
So
been around for, not even a
America is a,
quarter of that,
yeah,
300
new
years,
land.
and it's not even
So
300.
that the reason I brought that up is, you know, uh, Americans are not threatened by anybody.
Mhm.
It's not because they cannot be threatened. It's just people don't really care about it because American society itself is, you know, exploding on its own,
Well, no,
or so to speak,
a lack of an
right?
external
Because
enemy.
you folks have to make motivational advertisements for people to fight for your country.
Yeah. Well, no, and a lack of external enemies and external, competition creates
Threat.
internal threats,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. And I'm again, it's like I view that we will either enter into the best era of the
Hmm.
United States ever,
I don't
or the
think so,
worst.
Isaac, because you got people questioning your sexuality.
Well, that's the thing. Is that going to be the case 50 years from now or 10 years from now, to where
Yes,
we might look
definitely.
back on
Not
this?
even 10 years. Give me 5 years.
Well, okay, but then even something like that, you would, by
Isaac,
making that
if I
statement.
was the devil, right? If I was the devil, I would be like, give me 5 years, I will show you.
But
Because
you
one
as
thing is apparent, right?
yeah,
One thing is apparent. You cannot have Bible study in schools, but you can have drag queens stripping in schools. You see
fascinating to
where
see
it's
the
leading
Indian
to, right?
perspective here, and as how conservative you sound.
Yeah, fuck that, man. Come on.
Hmm.
You're like, don't talk about religion, but you can talk about sexuality, which is the most primal thing a human is born with.
Mhm.
And you challenge that, and you're like, it's okay to challenge the most natural instincts, but you cannot challenge something that's man-made.
Well, and
Imagine,
you could argue that even
imagine that.
religion is primal as well because it is innate
Yes,
in
that's
us
what
to.
I'm saying. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. But one could argue that sexuality is more primal than religion, right? Because religion is taught, and you know, sexual, um,
Is not
I
taught
would
in the
say,
same degree as religion is taught, and I do see
yeah,
that.
because you're born, you know who you are,
Right. Right.
and okay, what, you know I don't want to go into details, but you're aware of the natural instincts, right? So American schooling system is, let's question that. Okay, let's put you up on puberty blockers, right? Let's snip snap you at the age of freaking 3 months old. And yeah, let's not talk about religion. Yeah, because it's too extreme.
Again, emotion versus logic, and emotional decisions versus, let's actually look at things.
Yeah, man, what I'm trying to say is, I feel like there should be a rule in constitution, like, don't mess with others children.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like Joe Biden and certain people have said like our children, and it's like no, it's not your children. It is
No.
the
Yeah.
individual who has the child. That is their
Hmm.
child, and if they go and
Yeah.
expand that right to their family or expand that right to the community to around them that is
Hmm.
building and raising the child, because again,
Yeah.
humans were typically raised in tribes. They were raised by the grandmothers, the aunts, the friends, everybody. There was a tribe in order to raise the child, and that was
Hmm.
typical. And now we are so secularized in America, particularly where there is no sense of community. We have these screens
Yeah.
around us, which are great, but
Isaac, it's not as invasion of privacy, right? I think that that's a term that doesn't exist anymore in conversations.
yeah,
It used to be a big deal, right? Invasion of privacy. But once people found out CIA is tapping everything, they're like, yeah, man, I'm okay with no privacy.
yeah. Well, it's again, and I do believe though I have a degree of optimism that is consistently being
Yeah,
tugged.
man, I'm pessimistic though.
Well, and well, that's your right and your prerogative to be. And I
Yeah,
have this constant
I
war
think
between
we both are.
both of them.
Yeah, I think we both are balancing right on the optimistic and pessimistic. Let's see what happens.
I would argue and say that where I'm at right now, Ganesh, is I am more
Yeah.
optimistic for India's future than I am optimistic for America's. I am being, and I almost don't even want to even smile or laugh about that, but I say that wholeheartedly because we have to change a lot of the things at our
Hmm.
core in
Yeah.
order to get back to that
Hmm.
era to where I do believe that it is possible for us to enter into America's golden age that we have not hit it yet. But we will
Yeah.
either enter into the golden age or we will enter
Hmm.
into the dark ages. And
Yeah.
I hope and pray that that is not the case. And I think that these
Yeah,
conversations though will
man.
be the
I
reason.
also feel like if once a human being realizes how minute he is in terms of the timeline of the earth, people would not be shitty as they are, I feel like.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Right?
I would
Because
have to agree.
every civilization has taught that we are here forever. And one small planet starts to piss off some stones and we're done.
Well,
Right? That's how simple we are, you know. And people think, we are here to stay, like we will be here forever. That might be the case, but that doesn't make you humble, right?
well, and it's like I don't believe that there's this idea, and then I'm going to have to wrap it up. It's already almost midnight where I'm at.
Hmm.
It's been an
Yeah.
amazing conversation. I really have enjoyed this. This is something I want people who follow me to watch. But um, man, I'm just thinking through. We have this sense of importance, and like energy, like matter, it cannot be created or destroyed, right? The primary laws, right? I believe that a personal brand is kind of the same way. I believe that a personal brand can be created but cannot be destroyed. But the closest way it can be destroyed is if the person is forgotten. If the person is
Hmm.
forgotten, they essentially just disappear. But we think about the
Yeah.
historical figures from Gandhi to Martin Luther King to Martin Luther to Jesus Christ to Adam to Eve to Genghis Khan to any person throughout history, historical figures. They're remembered and have this sense of importance given to them based off of who they were and what they accomplished. And
Hmm.
a person can have a sense of entitlement if their results match it. And it's not about
Yes.
just blanket narcissism. And right now we have a
Hmm.
lot of narcissism with nothing to show for it, and that is dangerous,
Yes.
right? You as well. So, man, it's been a pleasure. It's been an
Yeah.
awesome conversation.
Thank you so much, Isaac, for being here. Of course it's midnight for you. Yeah, but thank you for being here, taking your time. And I feel like we have given some value
I feel
to our audience too,
education,
right?
entertainment, a little bit of everything. It's been good.
Yeah.
It's been good. Seriously.
Yes. And to my audience, guys, this is the end of the episode. And if you have survived this long without being offended, congratulations, you're just a normal human. And until next episode, thank you and take care.